super excited about that endeavor. I love kids a lot. I love families a lot. I say that I'm a kid person and I have grown-up issues, and my grown-up issue is generally that I don't like grown-ups. It's an issue I have. I think kids are so able to change and adjust and fluctuate and make change happen so much faster than grown-ups do. But the reality is that many of the issues that children struggle with are a grown-up issue. They can only be mitigated. They can only be adjusted by the adults. And so what we're going to talk about today is some things that happen in the life of our children and how we grown-ups may need to make some adjustments. And it's not meant to be a shame and judgment of what is happening in our world, though we will need to notice any conviction and notice anything that might prompt us to change. So let's talk about what's happening. What do you notice in children in our world? Your own children. Let's talk about like 0 to 10-year-olds. What do you notice when you're out and about with 0 to 10-year-olds? What are some habits? What are some traits, some challenges, some benefits? What do you notice?
Short patience.
Impatient. What else?
Might often do something and say no, they won't do it well.
So like a low tolerance for frustration.
They don't know how to be bored.
Yeah. Can't be bored.
Constructive criticism.
They don't take the redirect.
Coaching well.
Can't be coached. What else?
Yeah, easily offended.
Easily offended. Do any of yours want to be in charge?
A need to be doing, not the bored part, but a need to be entertained or doing something that's more than like an activity.
Need to be active or entertained? Anybody noticed any disrespectful 0 to 10-year-olds? Disrespect?
Not ours.
What about preteens? What do you notice in preteens these days?
Those same things.
Ditto. Ditto.
The way they approach or speak to adults, that they're at this level.
Yeah, so like authority figure,
Yes.
disruption in authority. Any of your preteens have technology or phones? Phone use?
Used to.
Preach.
Tablets, yeah.
Tablets. And if you're out and about, let's say you're out and about, have you noticed that age range might have a phone? So technology use, technology, maybe not a phone, but technology. What are their social interactions like? They interact at school probably. Any outside of school social interactions?
Occasionally.
Poor interactions.
Poor social interactions.
So we're from Central Texas, and we've noticed because like the parents aren't connected and know each other, like our kids are super isolated. Where like, they don't have any friends besides themselves, and so that age group has a really hard time connecting with even one friend.
Unable to connect, yeah, isolated, disconnected. What about teenagers? Who has the teenagers? Teens. What do you notice? You're like, I'm so glad I'm not there yet. You're getting there. Technology use, yes, no?
Yes.
Connected over phones, connected over technology. What about social media?
The ones I work with are very self-centered.
With the preteens and teens, just their being overly aware of others in a negative way.
So it's interesting because we're self-centered, but we're noticing everybody else. Any other noticings of this age group?
When I'm out and teens are serving me, like, at a restaurant or cashiers, apathy.
Ah, so good. Like not engaged inspirationally with anything. Apathy. That's a hard one.
Extremely anxious.
Anxious.
Everything.
Yeah. What about us? What did we notice about ourselves?
You're perfect.
Perfection.
We are really good at noticing others.
We're observant. I'm a positive reframer. We're observant.
There we go. Anxious.
Anxious.
I feel like we're like rubber bands sometimes, like we can just keep going back and forth, like between family and then society, like culture, like what is the best thing? I don't know.
Ah, yeah. That's a tricky one, isn't it? Like confused? Like uncertain? Uncertain what the right thing to do is? Confused about what is proper practice?
Exhausted.
Exhausted. What about our technology use? Is that a thing? Distracted?
Numbing. Well, and I would, today in our family session, Ryder called Ron and I both out.
Oh,
One of the
Boom.
questions was, what is a habit you'd like to change in your family? And she said cell phone use. She doesn't have a cell phone like we do. So you're right, and I'm distracted and numbing, that I just think to add, we're modeling the wrong things. We are modeling the wrong things.
yeah. So this can be real sobering, and it's truthful, and it is not built out of shame and judgment. This is not the time that we're going to be smacking hands. It is come about out of a number of different experiences in our world, and through the span of time, things have happened that have kind of created this boiling point of which technology and cell phone use has changed the landscape of childhood. And so we're going to listen to one student's experience of what it is like for him.
Knock, knock.
So loud!
Hi there. I'd love
happening?
to show you what a K-12 powered school is really.
When I was little, I grew up in a small neighborhood with a bunch of boys. And after we finished homeschool for the day, we rode our bikes around, went fishing, swimming, climbing trees, and any other fun thing a kid does outside. When I was 8, we went to an after-school program 2 days a week. And I was excited to play with all the other kids. But no one was playing. They were all playing on their Game Boy, and everyone had one except me. It didn't matter what I tried, and no kid wanted to play when they had their own personal screen. This was my first experience with the isolation devices create. As I got older, I wanted to have adventures, go explore. But everyone's heads were still down. And instead of Pokemon on a Game Boy, it was Instagram and Snapchat on a smartphone. I was 13 when I started to feel real grief. I had no idea what, but I knew something was gone. Okay, so here's the part where this could turn into another talk about how kids should get their face out of their phones, go outside and talk to people. That's already been said so many times, and it's having no effect. It's because it misses the real problem. The real problem is that an entire ecosystem has been lost. Let me help you understand what I mean by that. Imagine a herd of antelope roaming and grazing the grass of a beautiful savanna. As they roam, they're contributing to their own ecosystem. Now imagine someone introduced feed bins. The antelope stay near the bins. They no longer have to roam and graze the savanna. All the animals stop roaming, creating an unnatural order. Over time, the entire ecosystem of the savanna becomes an unrecognizable wasteland. I've heard my parents tell stories of the savanna. Teenagers roaming the mall, hanging out at the arcade, going on dates. If they wanted to connect with someone, they had to go see them. They were forced out of their house, past their insecurities, and into the wild. There was no other option. And so they did. Everyone did. That was normal. That healthy ecosystem encouraged real connection. Okay, I want you to really understand what I'm saying. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to bring up some of your favorite memories as a teenager with your friends. All the times you hung out, the mall, the dumb stuff you did together. Put yourself back in those memories. Okay, now put those images in a line. Now delete the first one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Okay, open your eyes. Imagine the landscape of your memories as a teenager without any of that. It's a bit of a wasteland, isn't it? The ecosystem for those experiences doesn't exist anymore. And it's worse than that. Remember all those immature moments you had as a teenager? Those moments are meant to evaporate. Now they're permanent. Because of that, we live under constant scrutiny. We don't get the luxury of just being an immature teenager. We have to watch everything we do and say. Anything can be captured and made permanent. This creates an unsustainable level of anxiety and unnatural pressure. Teenagers judging each other and being insecure is normal and natural, and we can deal with it if the moments evaporate like they're meant to, but they don't. We're anxious because we have to constantly sleep with one eye open in this wasteland. I'll never forget the morning at school I decided to notice the girl walking next to me on her phone. Every kid sitting on a bench lying in the courtyard on their phones. I only saw 3 kids not on their phone. These devices aren't connecting us. They're isolating us next to each other. I knew I needed to make a change. I thought I'd just not go on my phone as much. I deleted Snapchat, added it back. Deleted social media, added it back. I charged my phone outside my room, and I just charged in my room back where I started. Trying to change my behavior was exhausting. And it hit me. I'm the kid sucked into the Game Boy. If there was no Game Boy, we would have all played together. That's when I decided to get rid of my smartphone completely. So at 15, I got a flip phone. And became isolated in a completely different way. There were times when I felt like there was no winning. I made all the changes. I put down my phone. I tried to talk to people. I spent time on social media. But because everyone else was still sucked in, and I do mean everyone, it didn't matter what I did. I was just back to being the only kid without a Game Boy. If we're not careful here, you can miss the whole point of this talk. So listen closely. Kids are lonely, not only because we won't put away our phones, but because when we do, there's nothing for us to turn to instead. We don't actually want our phones or social media or Snapchat. What we want is real connection. But that doesn't happen naturally in this new ecosystem. Everything that naturally breeds real connection has been lost. The new ecosystem breeds isolation. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It's human connection. Addiction happens when someone is isolated. We don't want to be addicted. But what choice do we have when we're living isolated no matter what we do? I know adults are frustrated because kids won't get their faces out of their phones. But I'm inviting you to understand the real problem and to have some compassion for us. Because we're starving in a wasteland while you tell us to get back out there onto a savanna that no longer exists. I'm not here to help you feel good. I'm here to help you feel how bad kids feel. I've learned how to create an oasis in this wasteland. More and more of my friends are joining in. They don't go on their phones when we hang out. They don't record anything for the most part. For a couple hours, when we hang out at the dock, playing cards, laughing, and telling stories, I imagine the possibility of roaming wild and free.
I wonder how sobering that is. Some realities that are spoken from the perspective of youth, from a student perspective, and puts the responsibility where it lies on our plates as adults to create environments where they don't have to feel that way. But the reality is in 2010 to 2015, smartphones came online, high-speed internet came online, technology at our fingertips came online, and with that came connection to a device that could give us access to communication in a completely different way. And so Generation Z is the first generation to go through puberty with smartphones. And so they have access to information that no previous generation had, and it is changing the way that brains develop. It's changing the way that life is patterned. It's changing the way of communities and cultures, and we are right in the middle of it with our age children and those right above us and behind us. And the reality is these circumstances are increasing anxiety, depression, self-harm, and suicide. And there's just no getting around it. And he said it so plainly, right? Because he's lonely. He is isolated. And so these are the circumstances that come about. Depression, the screen is a little bit off, so I said the last time I just can't look at it. I'll get lost and try to fix it. So I want to talk a little bit about what anxiety could look like in students. It's a little bit different than what adults experience, and as is depression, because kids experience it much more physiologically. They don't have the words, so they are going to present in behaviors, as do adults, right? But we just use big tones and big words and we push it out there. Kids don't know what they're feeling, so they might complain of tummy aches more, headaches more. My kid is a chronic nurse attendee. Like, he just will show up when his anxiety gets high, he will get a tummy ache. It's legit. He's not trying to avoid. He doesn't feel good. It's just there. So he will go to the nurse and try to regulate and go back to class and do it again 2 hours later. So I get the full report. So I want you to think about your kids who might be complaining about things because they don't have the words to say, I'm stressed out, or I don't know why I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to go out and play. But their bigger behaviors might come in explosive tantrums or crying fits or just lethargia that just makes them not want to get up and do anything. We experience that too, and kids will experience it, and then they will start thinking, what is the matter with me? I mean, we think that too, but when kids start thinking, what is the matter with me, it just permeates their system in a way that shuts them down more and more and more. So imagine how that could feel so good if you have this on the other end of your hand, because A, you don't have to feel it, you don't have to talk about it, and you can kind of explore on your own what's actually happening to you. So that's what's happening in a lot of families and a lot of systems. So we are looking at despair, difficulty speaking clearly, low mood, indecision, anything that we experience, a kid will experience, but we won't identify it because they're kids. We'll just be like, oh, they're having a rough day. Oh, they just don't feel good. And there's so many other things we need to rule out. So we are going to be looking for this in association with other habits and other circumstances and really knowing your kid. So I'm going to skip to why this is happening, because I thought it was all about cell phones. I thought this was the devastating factor. Like, the creation of this was all the wrong. But in the 80s and 90s, we moved away from playing outside. In the 80s and 90s, we started watching news networks all the time, and we started hearing about all the bad things that were happening. So then we said, oh, it's not safe for us to have our kids outside, and we put up big fences, and we moved out of like community dwelling where we would parent each other's children, because we started hearing that you could get in trouble for doing that. CPS reports were going up because people were tattling on each other, so everybody just kind of isolated. And in so doing, we moved out of play-based child rearing into another realm. So the 80s and 90s, we didn't have the technology to do it, but we were creating that oasis, or creating the ecosystem transformation, because we moved out of play-based childhood and we moved indoors. And what happened was, instead of going outside and encountering risks and having to problem solve and letting kids work and negotiate with themselves what was happening, we intervened. We pulled them inside and we became their playmates because we're just so fun. We're just so fun, and they're just so fun. And we were scared, right? We are scared. I'm scared. I mean, like Ryan walks to school and walks home, and I let him ride his bike, and I am at the window sometimes like, please come home alive. Please come home. And I'm scared because the stories out there are scary, and I can't trust everybody, and we are being told not to trust people. And so in addition to our anxiety going up, which our kids are now living in, we're more anxious. So then we're on our phones more, right, to regulate ourselves. And they are moving their brain out of discovery mode into defensive mode. So instead of the brain trying to take in all the information and see the world as this like encounter with new items and new experiences where your brain can problem solve and conflict resolve and create, they have gone into defense mode. Nothing is safe. Look how anxious mom is. She doesn't want me outside. I should go over here. I'm not going to do it. And so then we have an inhibition of learning. They're not able to learn in the creative, dynamic way that their brain was created to learn. And so then they have this fragile childhood where it's risky to go out and do it, so I'm just not going to do it. So then we're like, go outside at like 8, 9 years old, and they're like, we've never been outside. What do we do? I'm bored. I don't know what to do out here. They don't know how to dig in the dirt, pick up the sticks, and create knives and weapons out of them. Because now we've said we've got to be safe. We've got to pull it all in. And so that has created this kind of overprotection where then they don't trust themselves to problem solve. So they come back to us and say, they weren't very nice to me. Then the mom calls the teacher and says, so-and-so is doing such and such, fix it. And the kids are not empowered to know that they can handle some things on their own. And then they're not out and about in environments with things that could be scary, so their brain can like grapple with it and be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Oh, I did fall down and I did cut my leg, but I can live through that. So then they have phobias, like the increase of phobias and OCD things is really high in my practice right now. Just kids that are like, I can't do that. I can't do that. Because their brain hasn't naturally moved out and done the practice of growing and developing. So, and then we're more fearful because we're watching this all play out and they're anxious, so we get anxious, then we want to protect them. And we've created this really fragile dynamic where we're not wanting to just throw the kids out there to figure it out. We want to figure it out and protect them as we should. And fundamentally, that's not how our brain works. Fundamentally, our brain is seeking out information and wanting to create and explore, and 0 to 5 is the time to do that. If we don't get it, then we get to the next level when we are sending them off to school and they feel ill-equipped because they never had the opportunity to learn and grow in the ways that their brain was made to do. So we worship safety above all, and it creates this disruption in attachment. The interesting thing is, like, secure attachment happens between the ages of 0 and 2, and that's through gentle eyes, gentle voice, gentle touch. But it is an ongoing process where kids are branching out and coming back. So I'm going to go out into the anxiety, I'm going to grow through it, and then I'm going to come back. But if we don't allow that process to happen, then it's going to be insecure, and we're going to have this group of children who don't feel like they can go out and accomplish the tasks of living. So we start here at this secure base, and we have this older, wiser person who gives us safety to reach out. So usually that's a caregiver, right? And then they step outside of that comfort zone because they feel secure, they're going to be safe. So they go explore, and inevitably they're going to get anxious and scared. This is where learning happens. This is what has to happen for their brains to develop. This has us then coming back to get comfort and calm. But overprotective parenting keeps kids safe on base, and it prevents all that from happening. Is this new awareness to anyone? Has anybody thought in this realm before? Like, I have always been like, here's the issue, and I've always talked about how fences went up and we've just kind of like desegregated, we're all in isolation now, but I never put it all together that we've pulled kids inside and they're not outside playing. We've just taken the opportunities for brain development by the wayside. So why is this happening? Well, in addition to not playing, we have these devices. And the increase of phone-based childhoods has created some detriments to development. It's created some foundational harm. Social deprivation is what that young man was talking about. The isolation that is bred when we are connected to a device and not to each other. The sleep deprivation that comes from this, because you're getting the stimulation and your brain doesn't know how to turn it off. You've got constant bombardment, and this is often where anxiety and depression is bred, because you're not getting enough rest, so you're not taking care of yourself, and then it increases your ability to think. So then you feel bad about yourself because I'm not doing well in school anymore. And then there's this increase in accidents that happen because you're not getting enough sleep. So you don't feel good because you're tripping and falling. The increase of accidents for teenagers has gone upward since the use of cell phone use, not just because they're on their device when they're driving, but because they're not sleeping. So they don't have access to their thinking enough to drive safely. This attention fragmentation, I remember when my kids were little and the research was saying like commercials are interrupting concentration. Like too many commercials, they can only concentrate for 5 minutes and then there's a commercial. So I was like, I've got this, we'll just watch movies. No commercials, I'll just put a DVD in, a video in, and we'll watch a movie. Well now, we've got notifications, they say up to 7 notifications a minute on some teenage girls' phones. So you've got a constant bombardment of somebody trying to get your attention while you're over here trying to pay attention to what's being said. So then that limits them staying on task. So they're not able to concentrate and focus, and they need the insurgence of affirmation that's coming from the notification that's coming in. So it's just this spiraling of chemicals in the body which lead to some addictive behaviors. And he talked about that, and I loved his quote that said, you know, the opposite of addiction is connected relationships. Isolation breeds addiction. Connected relationships, human connectedness is what is the opposite of addiction. So why does any of this matter? Because brain development is what God gave us to live in this world. He created our brains just so ultimately fantastical that it does everything we need to thrive and live in this world. And when we are inhibiting that, then we don't get to live out the purposes that God has given us. We don't get to see our kids be created in His image and created with the purposes that He has planned. Because childhood is the apprenticeship for learning skills. If we don't allow it, then they don't get the skills. And then we're looking at the consequences of a society that doesn't have human connection, that is that wasteland where people are self-involved and unable to connect and see the needs of others. And I think that we can all notice the ways that we are walking that line right now. And that is not shame and judgment, that is just awareness for us to turn the tides within communities, and there are some suggestions. Social development is critical, and that's being disrupted. We're not getting to be socially connected. This is a great weekend that took all that stuff out of the way. The social development that comes through choir tour when there are no phones. Like huge change of kids' behaviors during that week. Cultural development, when you think about what kids can learn from here, it takes away them learning from here. Our culture is lost when they have access to every other culture that ever existed in the world. They don't have to tune into what the cultural expectations of this home is, this community is, because they have access to everything else. And then learning development. So especially in girls, 9 to 12-year-old girls, they are highly susceptible to the biases that are offered through technology. Marketing is directly going after that age demographic because they are creating their identities during that time. And so the conformist bias is the most used, the most often seen is what you're going to conform to. So they're piloting and promoting a very certain look and style, and the more you look at it, the more it comes in, and marketers know that that smooths the brain for that information. It's like a tire that keeps going along the same line, and then that's what they're going to live out of. The other is prestige bias. Whatever is the highest angle shown, whatever is the most desired, that's what they're going to want. So they just elevate that to the top. Then the girls are watching that. They think that's what they should be. They can never get there. So what do you think that leads to? Depression, anxiety, self-harm, suicidal ideation. Because they can never meet it. They can't get there. And marketers are looking to get their item, their object out there. And so we have to be aware of what is happening on devices during those particular times. This is some interesting statistics because you can see, like 2010 is when the cell phones came out, high-speed internet, and look, major depressive episodes just went up and up and up. It's not coming down. It just happened to be that this graph was pulled at the beginning of January of the 2021-22 year. So it just hasn't had time to go up. It's gone up. So we look at this, boys have less of it, girls have more depressive episodes, but if you look at school alienation, like the ways that kids have withdrawn from activities, engagement, it has gone up since 2010, English-speaking countries, but it's everywhere that there was a cell phone. This is not just a contemporary American issue. This is across all countries that have access to this. The side effects, the devastation, the symptoms are all present. This I found so interesting because this talks about internalizing and externalizing behaviors. Internalizing are like self-loathing, self-harm, shame. Externalizing destructive aggression. Typically boys would have more of those behaviors, but if you look at it, the boys externalizing are going down. So there's actually less reporting of violence among men, boys, and internalizing is going up. What do you think accounts for that? If in the past it's always been boys have been aggressive, they're out there living it out, getting the anger out, and now it's going down, what are they doing? They're internalizing. What do you think accounts for that? Their mental health has gone up, and they're contained, they're isolated, so they can't play out the aggression with anybody. There's nobody there to wrestle with. There's nobody there to get mad at. They can be in their room playing it out on a device, and they're going to self-implode. In Japan, there are whole systems of men who never leave their home, who get food delivered to their door by their parents, don't have jobs, and live in isolation. They say they're the happiest men in Japan because they don't have to go out and do anything. And they're being totally catered to. And that is happening in the United States now. Failure to launch among men is going up and up and up, and they are creating their own ecosystem in their room, and they're catered to because they're sad and depressed and their parents want to help them and they don't know how. And they're addicted and they can't get out of their room anymore. It's a staggering statistic, and girls internalizing has gone up way higher than boys. So the differences between boys and girls are kind of staggering. Social media is big for girls because they're more engaged in relationship dynamics. They're more visually stimulated. Girls' aggression is like gossip, right? Tattling, gossiping, and promoting it. This is perfect for that because you can just type something up and spread it like wildfire. 5th grade girls, man oh mercy. That's a hard segment of society right now. Preteen girls. Is that what? Are your girls 5th grade? Ah, good times. You got this. You got this. Yay, you do? Is it so fun?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad you did. You're good.
Sheds a lot of light.
This is happening because they are seeing things, they're trying to meet expectations, they don't feel connected, and then when they want to get back, they want to make their point, they can do it so directly with social media that it just spreads like wildfire. It's a detriment to the whole system. Girls share their emotions more, and girls are subjected to internet offenses by perpetrators more. And I got on the soapbox just a little bit earlier where I talked a little bit about why, perpetrators can go after boys and girls. But if you think about the way we talk to boys and girls, it's often very different. So boys, we have this firm tone, and I'm generalizing here, it's not for everybody. And we expect them to stand up to people. We expect them to say no, stop, I don't like that, be assertive, be aggressive. For girls, we often talk to them like, okay, now that's enough. Now be nice. I want you to be kind. So we don't teach them to say no. We don't teach them to say, stop, I don't like that. When they use a big voice, oftentimes we soften it. We say, oh, that's too much. So I'm going to suggest to you that this right here, we can work on in our families. We can say, you say no, and you sound like this. And you do it in person, and you do it on a phone. We say no. And we do not just cater to. And that is a grand generalization, but it is something that I notice in practice. It is something I notice in the schools. It is something you can observe in settings across the nation. We have a different expectation for women than we do for men. And we have to give girls the voice to speak up because they're not safe. And as much as we think pulling them inside is safe and it's keeping them from danger outside, this is dangerous, and we have to be the ones that protect them from that. Boys are impacted in a different way. They have withdrawn from the physical world, so they're not living out the adrenaline that comes with being a boy. And so they are like frustrated inside, and they can play it out on a device with a game, and oftentimes they're talking to somebody while it's happening, so it actually is building a little bit of a relationship. It's synchronous. It's happening in the moment. So they feel connected, and that drives them a little bit. But the amount of time that's used can create the statistics of about 7% of boys have an addiction with their behaviors being too tied to it. Boys began to shun risk. Mental health began to decline as experienced fewer outside activities. So boys need that kind of active outside engagement in a way that girls are getting their emotional and social emotional needs met differently. So the consequences for boys look a little bit different, but both of them are trending towards increased anxiety and depression. This is a really interesting statement. Reduction in real-world communities leads to normlessness. There are no social norms when you're on the internet. Everything is acceptable. Everything is agreeable. There's no social norm that says this is how we do it. And so they can pick and choose what their social norm could be. And then we get the disrespect when we implement our social norm, right? My expectation is this. They're like, wait a minute, that's us as adults don't have the same social norms anymore because we're all gaining from our own perspectives. And then any kid who has a device can be like, well, that's not how I do it. So getting back to a social norm within a community so that when your kids are together, the expectation has been discussed and everybody is held accountable is one way that we can counteract some of this. That leads to how our church community is impacted, right? Because our behaviors are typically incompatible with church life. Because we don't want to be judges. We don't want to be self-involved. We don't want to be selfish. We don't want to be looking at what the look of things are. We want to be about the inside, but we're not getting any of that when we're on our devices. And while we're on our devices, we can't be connected in rituals like worship or moments like this, which are so valuable. So social media keeps us in a more self-involved state, which keeps us from living out God's call in our life to love and serve others. We can't notice the need when we're looking down. Because let's be honest, we're not putting our needs out there on this. We're putting out the good stuff as best we can. So we don't know what people need. We don't know what they want. We don't know their hurts. So we are isolating ourselves further and further, and we're moving away from the church global that God has called us to. In addition to that, while we're inside on this, we don't get to be involved with God's creation. We're not outside. Scripture is so rich and full with the content of creation, and you can only create with the content you've been exposed to. You can't manifest anything that you haven't been exposed to. So Scripture gives you this visual of a world that we would dream of having. And if we can't get out of the phone into the church and think about the world as God had seen it and as God describes it, we can't possibly create it in our lifetime. We can't bring heaven to earth if we don't know what that is and we don't know what it looks like. And it is not what social media says it is. So the task is high. What can we do? We can advocate for change. We can change policies that say anybody who has a device can check that they're 13 or 16 and have access to anything they want. Right now, there is nothing that keeps our kids from checking the box that says, I am 13. And the age for internet, appropriateness is 13. Suggestions would be to move it to 16. There are some legislatures and some tech companies and some family groups that say they want something to be on the device that says this device is belong to a child, so that when the button is pushed, the notification goes to the receiving end that says, no, that's not true. This is a child's device, so that they can't have access to anything. So we need to advocate for that change. We need to be talking to legislatures saying this is it, and we need to go to tech companies to develop better age verification. That's what this would be, right? Like age verification by adding features to allow parents to designate their phones in such a way. What can schools do? Go phone free. Wiley is going phone free. I don't know how exactly that's going to look. I think they have cases or something that are supposed to be. The goal here, there are many teachers that would say no devices in class, but the detriment is while they're changing classes or in lunchrooms, they're behind a device, so they're not socially interacting. So the all-day phone free would be they don't have access during passing periods and or lunch, and that is the goal. That's what that phone free is supposed to be. And then become playful. Go outside. Create green spaces that are not just with play equipment that are ordained to be used in specific ways, but like take out raw material, construction-like material, blocks and bricks and pipes that you know kids are going to get hurt on and will scare you, and then let them go and do it and stand back and turn away. Just turn away and don't look. That is what the suggestion is to get kids outside, give them raw material, let them create, let them go through the tension of trying to move something and need to coordinate with somebody else how to move it. Let them cooperate with other people, let them conflict resolve. And even if we can't do that, maybe we as the adults will keep our mouths shut when the conflict occurs between the siblings or the groups that are playing together. It's so hard because we're hearing the injustice of what is happening, not just to our kids, but even when it's just our kids, we want to go in and adult it. We want to go in and put our adult perspective on it. But that's not going to help them in the long run develop the skills of problem solving and cooperation that they need to have to be successful. Offer more shop classes because we don't get the guys out there playing as much. So we need to be structuring it into our school days that they have some outlets to be using their bodies in ways that are being underutilized right now because that physiologically is good for them. And then add more male teachers. But what can we do? What will we be willing to do? We have to become gardeners instead of molders and shapers. Instead of thinking we know what our kid is supposed to be, look like, what they're going to grow up and become, we are going to be gardeners that create spaces for them to develop into who they are supposed to become. This is hard because we know how hard the world is and we want them to be successful. We want them to have the skills and the abilities, and we see them. And we want to live into that, and we want to empower them. And they have to do it themselves. We have to create environments where they are free to explore and figure it out themselves. And that is on us. That is hard. We don't want them to be ill-equipped, and we're watching social media and we're watching what everybody else is doing. And we want our kids to be able to do that. And we live in the shame of not having that sometimes. And it's hard to sit back and know that's the reality and that that's right. So we need to create more unsupervised free play, creating a play-based childhood, not a phone-based. We need to delay our child's full entry into phone-based childhood, and I'm going to give you some statistics on that, some expectations or best practices. Do technology-free activities, go camping, have weekends where there's no phone out. Create times in your week where you know that you're going to put it away. Meal times, don't have your phone out. Increase older children's mobility, part-time jobs, doing chores at other people's houses, letting them ride their bike to a space and a place. They gave suggestions that I couldn't put up there, like send your freshman in high school to a foreign country to do an exchange. I was like, that sounds so great. I'm like, I can't even get him to go to the bathroom by himself right now. How am I going to send him off to a foreign land? It's crazy talk. So I didn't put that up there. Maybe one day. Increase their mobility. Encourage them to do something. All of us want to feel successful. We want to feel accomplished. We want to feel like we can do something. And by pulling kids back and removing opportunities, they don't think they can do it. They don't know how to do it. And then there comes a point, like he was saying, go on out there, get it done. And they're like, I didn't even get to go outside and play by myself until I was 12. And now I'm supposed to drive a car. I don't know where I'm going, and I need my phone, and I'm not supposed to have it now. Ugh. Manage your own anxiety. That's the key for me. I have to manage my own anxiety. And then I have to not regulate my anxiety by looking at my phone. I get called out regularly for that, right? Because I'm attached to my schedule and the communication that comes from that. And for me, I have to go, this is not work time. Because I can have it doesn't mean I should. And right now I have to put it away. And that is hard because I feel it pressing, and I like work a lot. So it feels good to have it. So, what are the technology recommendations? Up to 18 months, little to no screen time, except video calls with family. And then I was like, I had naked baby time for my kids when they were 0 to 12 months, when they had to it was right before dinner, and I had to make dinner, and they were grumpy, and I was like, oh look, baby Mozart, 30 minutes. And then I would be in the kitchen being like, I'm such a bad mom. I let them watch TV because I wasn't supposed to let them watch TV. Now I'm like, I could have, at 18 months or down here at 2 to 5, you can do a whole hour. I tried to push that off as long as possible. A whole hour at 2 to 5, 3 hours on the weekend. So they were only moderately damaged, but not by that, not that programming. There were other things that I did. 6 to 12-year-olds, no more than 2 hours per day. That's crazy, right? Lots of kids get a lot more than that. Use in common areas, use parental controls, watch for addictive behaviors, and decline mental health. Now, I have Ryan, he has a Kindle. I have all the protections on it, right? He knows all the things. He knows my passwords. He's telling people on the street how to get into my phone. And this is self-disclosure, and you can't share this with him because he'll get grumpy with me. But and I have him in the room with me, and he still found porn. He looked up something totally nondescript. Totally nondescript. Not gonna go there. Totally nondescript. And he found his way there. And when he pressed on it, it was 15 other items came up. So minute after minute after minute after minute after minute. So it wasn't like he was lingering on it. He might have been trying to get out of it. And then the shame that he felt. Because I'm right there and I'm like, hey buddy, what you doing? Nothing. Put it aside. Let me see. No, Mom, no. I'm like, you can tell me. Then tears, because he felt horrible. He didn't know how he got there, and he didn't know how to get out of it. And I have had kids, first grade, second grade exposure to pornography that have carried that shame that they don't know how to get out of because they thought they were so bad. Because we carry the stigma of that. Because we don't speak into it and go, buddy, that was an accident, and let me help you with that. And that was my responsibility to help you with that. So I want you to know that even in the room, even with all the safeguards, you have to be so involved. And then we have to take all the shame off of that, because these are little machines that they don't understand and we don't understand. So I don't get to carry the shame of that either. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I have to let that go and do better. So know that it's there, do what you can, and when it happens, get the help, have the conversation. Don't avoid it, and do not scold, because they don't know what they're doing sometimes too. Now, the next time it happens, he will know what he's doing, and there will be some serious scolding that goes on. 13 to 18-year-old, loosen the restrictions. Start with a flip phone. I think that is like a major piece, takeaway piece for me, is start with a flip phone. That they can have access to communication so they can be safe, and that they don't have to have access to high-speed internet smartphone usage. And if they can accomplish that at 12 or 13, then around 14, they can have a smartphone without social media. Now that is hard, right? Because he talked about how everybody's going to have social media, so it's going to feel lonely. So band together in community and find the people that will do this with you, so that you can say, we're getting together with these people, and there won't be phones, so you won't be tempted. And then when they're out and about, we are a countercultural, we want to be countercultural, right? We don't want to live into the expectations of this world, so we're going to have to do some things like sacrifice and feel different and normalize that feeling so that our kids can stand firm in who God created them to be. And we can't find that out if we don't do the work that it takes to give them the environment that's safe and healthy for them to develop. So I want you to have hope today. Hope is an optimistic state of mind that is based on an expectation of positive outcomes. So you are going to have to firmly ground yourself in an expectation that it can change for your kids, that we can do it differently, that we can create an environment and band together in community in a way that is different. In our biblical sense, in our spiritual sense, a hope is a confident expectation or assurance based upon a sure foundation. And I believe that we have that. We get to rest assured that even in the midst of this community in this world, that we have a sure foundation that God already knows who our kiddos are, already knows the struggles that lie ahead, and already knows how we will handle them. So we can rest assured and wait with joy and full confidence for what God has promised. I want you to know that I am available at any time to chat with you about anything, or have coffee. That's always fun. And I'm going to leave you with this pep talk, and then we're going to pray and take questions. Maybe.
I think we all need a pep talk. The world needs to stop being boring. Yeah, boring is easy. Everybody can be boring, but you're gooder than that. Life is not a game, people. Life isn't a cereal either. Well, it is a cereal. And if life is a game, are we all on the same team? I mean, really, right? I'm on your team, be on my team. Just united, people. You got air coming through your nose. You got heart beat. That means it's time to do something. A poem. Two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the road less traveled. It hurt, man! Rocks, thorns, and glass. My parts broke. Wah! Not cool, Robert Frost. I wasn't ever word too fast. I won't be the one that leads to awesome. It's like that dude Journey said, don't stop believing unless you dream something. I think that's how it goes. Get a better dream and keep going. Keep going, keep going, and keep going. Will Michael Jordan have quit? Well, he did quit. No, he retired. Yeah, he retired. But before that, in high school, what if he quit when he didn't make the team? He would have never made Space Jam. What will be your Space Jam? What will you create will make the world awesome? Nothing if you keep sitting there. That's why I'm talking to you today. This is your time. This is my time. It's our time. We can make every day better for each other. If we're all on the same team, let's start acting like it. We got work to do. We can cry about it, or we can dance about it. We were made to be awesome. Let's get out there. I don't know everything. I'm just a kid. But I do know this. Everybody's doing to give the world a reason to dance. So get to it.
Get to it. Get to it. All right. I'm going to pray, and then if y'all have questions, you can stick around and ask. Dear God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love for us. We know, Lord, that we are in challenging times, and that's no mystery to you. You are with us. You are for us. You know in advance how we are to love our children, and you know we won't always do it right, Lord, but we trust and believe that we have your life inside of us, the Holy Spirit inside of us, and that we have good plans for our kids that are steeped in who you created them to be. So Lord, we ask that you would help us slow down our lives, help us to focus on you, help us to put away the distractions, help us to get outside and play as you created this world to be such a gift to us. We thank you, Lord, that you have gifted us with your Son, Jesus. Help us to love and serve others in the ways that you have made plans for us. We love you and thank you. Amen. Any questions, friends?